This week on the podcast, we help you balance the scales by mastering your supply and demand challenges. Welcome to the Profit Cash Growth Podcast. This is the podcast for 6 and 7 figure business owners who are looking to grow a financially successful business. My co-host, Claire Hancock, is a finance director, chartered accountant and entrepreneur. And every week, I'll be exploring guidance and frameworks designed to help you increase your profits, improve your cash flow and grow your business. So we've got so much to cover today, Claire. We don't need to talk any more about how I don't fill a cup of tea high enough.
No, we've got new cups and they're sort of short and fat cups and you keep leaving about a centimetre at the top and I'm not getting enough tea in them. I'm angry.
You were genuinely angry a minute ago. You're like, can I just teach you, Simon, that when you use these mugs, you need to fill the tea right to the top so that when I take the tea bag out, there isn't a centimetre missing. But anyway, today, and I mean today because we're recording this on Sunday, the 19th of January. I know that this comes out on the Thursday after. Today is statistically the exact date that most people give up their New Year's resolutions, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's the problem with New Year's resolutions, isn't it? Is that it takes, 3 months to form a habit, they reckon?
Yeah.
And most people just don't have the staying power.
They just haven't formed the habit. Do you know, they label everything now, don't they? But today is actually referred to as Quitter's Day.
Oh, God.
There you go. There's nothing worse, is there, than feeling like you're struggling with your resolution and then hitting a day which somebody inherently negatively labels Quitter's Day. I mean, nobody wants to be a quitter today, I don't think.
I guess for the people that are sticking at it and are doing quite well, it can be a little bit motivating to get past this point. So there's some benefits to it. I mean, but were those the people that were likely to succeed anyway?
I think the question you want to ask is, how do people know? How do we know that this is the day?
Yes, Simon, how do we know?
Well, apparently it's from research from Strava, the fitness tracking app, which analyses over 800 million users and have identified this trend as being the one where people give up. So it's very much linked to kind of the New Year's resolution about exercise and things like that. Anyway, it's not our news story of the week, so let's find out what is. So, this week's news story of the week is extremely interesting. So I've just realised that I haven't got my book with what I wanted, but this is to do with sales statistics that obviously come out this time of year from millions of different industries. And I thought that this was just fascinating because I don't think you're going to guess these, but the industry that have just released their sales figures for last year.
I just think for anybody who is listening to this podcast, I don't think they can quite understand what I'm witnessing here. What? My beloved husband has just got out his notebook, then removed an elastic band from the outside of it, then got out a fold of a magazine.
Leave
I just think,
leave it out.
This is like,
when you see things that are interesting, you've just got to clip them, haven't you? So,
this is what my grandpa does.
Look, I'm part digital, part print. What can I say? So it's the statistics are out now. We talk quite a bit over the last year about like the car market because we've talked a lot about electric cars and things like that. So really interesting. The top 10 best-selling cars in the UK of 2024 are out. It's always the hotly weighted statistic, isn't it?
Car models or car makes?
It's the make and model. So it's the actual make and model. Top 10. I mean, I'm not going to expect you to get like the number sold, but I'll ask you just to see if you're anywhere near. But what I thought was like really interesting about this is I think if you asked me this, I reckon I'd get most of the list. But I wouldn't get number one. And that's what's shocked me so much. Because obviously we see cars driving around all the time. And I can't think that I even would have recognised this number one car on the road if I saw it. That's how mental it is. So I'm really surprised. But we'll run through them just out of pure interest. But can you guess what number one is, Claire?
I think I'm going to go. I'm really
torn.
You
have to go bold because it would be unfair of me to tell you that I can't imagine many people coming out with this. It totally surprised me. But
I feel like this might be, I don't know the proper name for it, but is it like an iconic with a Q in it? Iconic?
Oh, you're talking about the Hyundai, the electric one?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, there's the first shock horror. There is no electric cars on this whatsoever. Let's just be clear. Electric is not selling coming into the conversations we've had all year round.
So the only reason the only reason why I started with an electric car was because I know that there was a lot of hangover from supply chain issues with them not being able to get computer chips and things like that. So I thought that a lot of those cars were still being produced and sold in 2024.
Well, there's the first shock, isn't it? That there isn't a single electric car in the top 10.
Okay. Then I would probably say it's got to be maybe like a Nissan. or a Kia?
Well, I am asking for the model as well. I mean, just going.
Oh God,
Nissan. It's like
literally
what's a Nissan? I mean, it's going to be the.
I've got no car knowledge,
model.
so I mean, maybe a Qashqai.
Right, ding ding. You've just got number 3. Now, if somebody asked me, I would say the Qashqai because the knowledge that I do have is I think the Qashqai has been the number 1 selling car in previous years. So, which also surprised me. But these sort of affordable family SUVs are kind of the thing now.
Yeah, they're up there.
So that's number 3. Well done. Anything else? Are you completely blank? And I'll just.
I am so blank because I'm not into cars at all. I literally couldn't give a hoot as long as it's got 4 wheels and Apple CarPlay.
I'm going to break it. So yes, the Qashqai is number 3, and at number 2 is the Kia Sportage, which is basically like the large SUV Kia version. So unsurprising in those. At number 4 is the Nissan Juke, which again is kind of, an affordable mini SUV. Number 5, classic Volkswagen Golf. Number 6, Hyundai. Yeah,
that's really surprised me because I always think Golfs are actually quite pricey for somebody that wants maybe that like smaller hatchback. I always think Golfs are maybe like I hate to say this, it sounds a bit cliche, but like the runaround that you get the wife kind of car.
Cheaper than the Qashqai and the Sportage by a small amount, to be honest with
you.
Yeah,
but for a runaround, not your main family car.
Yeah. And then number 6 is the Hyundai Tucson, which is just another SUV by Hyundai. Audi A3, number 7. Volkswagen Polo, number 8. So the smaller version of the Golf, I guess. Volvo XC40, which is the small SUV. So there's a common theme that it's like the affordable SUV is winning this race. And then number 10 is the MG HS, which I don't even know what that is, but I think it's like the MG. I think your sister's got one of these.
Yeah.
So that affordable. Again, 24 grand. It's the cheapest sort of family SUV on the list as well. So anyway, number 1, din din din, the Ford Puma.
Oh, that is a really good looking car.
See, I don't think I'd have even known what one looked like.
I
did not think the biggest selling car in the UK is the Ford Puma. So for extra points, Claire, how many Ford Pumas were sold in the UK last year?
Oh, God.
I know you've got no anchor. You've got no number anchor to have any idea where to start with that number, have you? I wouldn't have.
300,000?
You're just way over. 42,465 is the biggest selling car. And actually the ones below are 42,000, 35,000, 30,000, 29. So you can kind of get a feel of the range of those. So
I did go way over with 300,000 actually. Now I'm thinking about that.
But there you go. Prediction for you. Do you think there'll be an electric car in the list next year?
No.
You don't think it's going to get there? No.
Because a lot of companies that I think there was a flurry in 2003 and 2004, particularly we know that, is it Volkswagen with their electric range? That came out, I think, in 2001, 2002. But there was a huge issue with manufacturing, with being able to get the computer chips to manufacture the cars, which meant there was this big boom of electric car sales in 2003. Loads of companies jumped on the bandwagon with these salary sacrifice schemes and things like that. But that's all kind of had its day now, and people are just back to buying cars in a normal way.
Yep.
So
I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens, because there's been a number that have come out and have really missed these electric targets. Will those targets get pushed out? I think there was like fines of £10 million going to Ford, who Ford are the worst performing in turning to electric. So
but then was it Ford or maybe Vauxhall? But one of them did hit their electric targets anyway. So yeah, I don't know. When you speak to people about electric cars, like there are some people, like my dad, for example, and my sister, they are convinced that sales of electric cars are just going to plummet, and eventually disappear.
Now, I think people think that because that's probably what I would have thought before I did lots of studying into kind of actually battery technology. And I think I said to you that literally in 5 years' time, the cost of batteries, the capacity of batteries and the weight of batteries are all going to literally halve in 5 years' time. It's going to be staggering just how much power you're going to be able to store in that car in only another 5 years' time, that all these problems are just going to go away. So I am now convinced it's here to stay. But like any technology, it's a 20, 30 year transition of evolution of, generations need to die out and move on to really feel the change. So anyway, enough about cars and electric cars. Let's move on to this week's deep dive. So Claire, this week you're going to be balancing the scales for all of our small business owners out there, aren't you? And help us master supply and demand challenges. And this follows on from a news story a few weeks ago where we were talking about Guinness having massive issues with their peaks and troughs in supply and demand, and a number of clients that you constantly work with who are always balancing their internal supply and demand challenges through their internal department. So tell us a little bit more about this concept and what you want to sort of educate us on today.
Yeah, so this concept is about having a bit more of a strategic approach to how your business is growing. And as small businesses, I'm guilty of this sometimes, is I think about the sales numbers and I think about, how many sales people I would need to put on, or how many accountants do I need to recruit to deliver the customer facing side of things. But often there is much more in the background, the cogs that keep the business turning. And it's about understanding and having a bit more of a strategic approach to growing all elements of your business in harmony. Yeah. Because if you're just focusing on sales and customer delivery, then the other elements of your business suffer. And this often leads, ultimately problems come out in the wash. People leave, you don't have the numbers that you need to make smart decisions, your cash flow isn't where it should be, your customer service levels drop. All of that type of thing are symptoms of not having a strategic approach to planning.
Okay.
And growing.
Great. So how do you take a strategic approach to it? Where do you start, and how do you know? Because I hear what you're saying, and lots of business owners will hear what you're saying about, you've just presented what, the perfect solution is. This is how it should look as you grow your business. But we all know that we often don't know those issues are going to happen, or what the balance is across our internal departments and various other things to manage our businesses, because we've never done it before. So we don't know till we know, so to speak. So how do we get ahead of that to build a strategic approach to it?
So to put it simply, you need to break your business down into departments. And that sounds like that might be maybe like a corporate word, but the reality is we've all got it. We've probably all got an admin department. We've probably all got a finance department. This might be internal or it might be external people as well. So don't get too hung up on where the people sit and whether you directly employ them or you don't. So you've got the common ones might be like finance, legal, admin, customer service. If you're a warehouse, then you're going to have like a logistics department. If you're a sales business, you're going to have a sales department. So just think about what the individual departments, and typically these are going to follow your team structures. If you think about where you've got a team lead or a manager, something like that, that's probably going to be a department for you.
Okay.
So you want to break your business down into departments. Now, try not to make it overly complicated and don't have a lot of departments. Maybe try and keep it to like 5 or 6 at max. And then you need to understand what their capacity is. So how many customers can they serve? And for some businesses, it might be that you say, okay, so our finance department has the capacity to support a business that can deliver for 100 customers. Or you might say our finance department has the capacity to deliver for a business that does 1 million of sales.
Yeah.
So you can either work in quantity of customers, maybe products shipped, products manufactured, whatever that sort of capacity measure is for your business, understand what that is and rate your departments based on that. So if you've got a logistics department that can ship 100,000 products a year, that's your capacity measure.
Yeah.
So therefore, what do you need in your finance team to support that? That probably is one full-time person in your finance team.
Yeah.
And so it's about understanding the capacity on each of your departments as they are today.
So do you think that as your business grows, so if you take your business as it currently is and you look at the time and resource across each of the departments it works and you worked out what that was, I don't know, for argument's sake, let's say as a percentage of your turnover, what is the chances of that percentage or that ratio remaining the same as the business grows?
Yeah, so you're talking a little bit about getting productivity gains there. So I think that this is, firstly, understand what your capacity measure is. Is it quantities? Yeah. Is it products dispatched? Is it customer served? Is it turnover? Yeah. Understand what that ratio is for you. And then you want to say, okay, if my finance department at the moment, for example, we can do, let's talk in millions of sales. If my finance department at the moment can serve 1 million of sales, how can we get your finance department to serve 1.1 million of sales without putting any extra resource in?
Yeah.
And that's where you then start to get these little productivity gains and therefore profitability gains. And as you start to scale your business, that's really what you'd be looking for, is each department to deliver more with less.
Okay. I thought you were coming from the angle of ensuring your business was equipped to deal with supply the demand as it boosts up, and how are people, not underfunding that, so to speak. So,
well, I think there's two things.
There's two angles you come in from that, I think.
Yeah, I think the first thing that what we really set out to talk about here is making sure that you understand this capacity and that you're putting resource and putting additional people or systems into the departments at the right time to allow them to grow with your sales number growing, because that's often what small businesses are guilty of, is they grow that sales number quite rapidly and they don't grow the rest of the business structure around it.
It's easy to do with like your most direct costs. So I'm thinking like, I quickly recognised that when we were growing that, I even noted on a bit of paper, like, we've got 3 people there and they're handling 50 live properties and that's now starting to struggle. And, divided that down. I said, so the next time we hit 70 properties, I need to put another person in. And those steps look you can start to get a feel for what those steps look like per person. So you know that between 50 and 70, you're getting those productivity gains. And then you've got that big step change. You've got to put somebody back in as you go from 70 to 90, for the next one. But how do I recognise that in my back office functions? How do I recognise that, because it's really obvious and easy to do with a direct operational person who's delivering on that service. But with a finance function or my marketing department, I have a view with various other things, and I do use things like percentage turnover, and I can only really talk about marketing because it's an interesting one. Like, I always think you should be spending about 10% of your turnover on marketing. And we sort of was like, okay, well, if your turnover is 300,000, you're spending 30 grand on marketing. If your turnover as your business grows to 600,000 and you've not kept an eye on that marketing, you could be way underspending on your marketing and then stifling the growth of your business moving forward. So you should rebalance those spends through your business as your business grows.
Yeah, so I think there's an element of when you've got things outsourced, it's about making sure you've got the right funds allocated. So if you're outsourcing your marketing, it's making sure that you are firstly in communication with whoever you're outsourcing to. I think that's crucial because, for example, when you were growing your business, did you ever go and speak to your finance manager and say, we're going to get near capacity, we're going to go up by X amount of capacity soon? Can you deal with that?
Yeah.
Those conversations just are not happening.
Yeah.
And that's where you get these pinch points. And okay, with something like finance or, I hate to say it, but a real back office function like finance, that's unlikely to necessarily impact the day-to-day operations and whether you can continue to deliver sales and customer service. But thinking about your business where you outsource sales progression, and so that's all that legal process that you outsource, are you really proactively understanding what the outsourced company has in terms of resource and whether they're growing at the same rate that your business is growing?
No, you're not, because they offer a certain service and you expect that to be, to be resourced accordingly. So it's more difficult to analyse the inner workings of somebody else's business, isn't it? But I mean, this is a bit like, you talked about the like whack-a-mole strategy, which is kind of like, I get that, but it's like, how can we be more proactive with it? With the whack-a-mole strategy, what you're suggesting is it's like basically what you see when clients come to you. They're in a panic because they've underfunded their finance function for so long, and then they need to do quite a lot of work, and it's quite costly to get it back, like running like a well-oiled machine, to then move the business forward. And then there's a big question about, they've had productivity gains and they've put extra profit on the bottom line by stifling that particular function for a while, but it's the unknown of how much by stifling it have they stopped the growth through lack of data, through lack of support, through all those type of things. And what's your thoughts? So what's your thoughts about that? Yeah,
so generally I would say that most businesses typically sort of when you get to about 80% capacity, this does entirely depend on the speed of your growth, so that is important to mention, but generally I find that when working with businesses, when they get to about 80 to 90% capacity is when they need to be onboarding the next team member.
Right.
So if you know what the capacity is of each department and you can track how utilised each department is, then you know those exact triggers for when you're going to recruit. So we talk about the whack-a-mole strategy, but that's more like if you think when a department reaches capacity, the mole's going to pop up right to the top and you're going to whack it back down by recruiting somebody else. Yeah. So for your sales, you might be hitting 5 sales moles for every 1 finance role or every 1 marketing role or every 1 admin role.
Yeah.
So you're going to have these ratios of like 5 to 1 to 2 to 3, depending on the different departments. And then that also, when you're thinking about planning and growing your business, maybe if you're looking at opening a new location or expanding and creating new areas and things like that, it's very easy for you to then plan because for X amount of sales, it's going to cost you X amount in marketing, it's going to cost you X amount in finance because you need the support services behind it to make it function well.
I mean, once you know your ratios, it's absolutely brilliant, because you can cost those all in to make sure you're charging the right prices, and it feeds into all that data as well. But it also means that you can proactively grow all of those departments alongside each other to make sure that you're delivering on the service, and you don't have this customer churn issue as well.
And I think where this really becomes quite apparent is when businesses sort of get to that, I'd say in, 1 or 2 million sort of stage, and the business owner really starts to step back from day-to-day operations and become more of a true MD, and they're not sort of on the tools anymore. And you think about having a business that runs without you in it. That's when it starts to become apparent how much stuff the MD has been picking up in the background, and that there just isn't really any business structure. There isn't processes. There isn't dedicated people for dealing with the elements of a business beyond sales and customer delivery.
Yeah, they're just not. They're massively underinvested in those sort of efficiencies and functions, and we see this a lot, don't we? Where on one side, we're very at the cutting edge of technology, AI, and everything there, so we can help support the clients with their transition with that. But the norm is that you go into businesses and some of them are pen and paper, aren't they?
Yeah.
Still in this day and age, like pen, paper, printing invoices off, stacking them in one side. Like, this is just like the productivity shift of even technology and internet never happened in the last 30 years, let alone ready to take the next step into artificial intelligence. So,
and if you're a business that's serious about getting multi-million pound turnover and really strong profits and an exit valuation,
most importantly, a really strong exit value,
then it's really critical that you start thinking about your business like this, because you could probably get to low millions, 1 to 2 million turnover, and probably get by without that structure. You'd probably be quite a busy MD, but you'd be earning really good profits, so you might think it's worth it. But then when you come to thinking about exiting your business, you don't have that structure in the background, and an investor looking at your business would probably say, well, we need to hire a full-time marketing person because the MD is doing it at the moment. We need to hire a full-time finance person because you've got a bookkeeper that's not really good enough, so we need to be bringing that in-house. You need to hire probably a PA and an admin assistant to manage all of this. And then before you know it, an investor wants to put all these additional heads in your business to support what it believes is right to grow the business, but none of that has been costed into your current profit, and therefore you're left with no money at the end of it.
And then it's, so by the way, actually we can only pay you this for the business. So they've absolutely hammered the business down. Plus, on top of that, they want return on the fact that it's a load of hassle and time than buying a business that's just ready and running. So there's got to be a big chunk of upside as well for their time, effort, consultancy, and turning that business into what it needs to be as well. So by the time you cut all that out, you potentially end up with, a very low value business based on what the value would be if you'd invest in those things all the way through. So it's about keeping your eye on every part of the business, not just what's directly in front of your nose, which is the sales and the delivery every single day. Great.
Yeah.
Good. Anything else you want to cover on this subject, Claire? Or we covered everything?
I think that what I used to utilise a lot when, maybe businesses that are probably around about 5 million plus, but it's still a good practice for the smaller businesses, and I use smaller loosely because they're still doing sort of £1 million plus, but to get into the practice of doing is when you've got anybody in your business, so say particularly departments that have only got one person, I do think it's really important that business leaders are transparent with everybody in the business about the financial goals. I don't think there's any point being coy about the profit that the business makes or the turnover that the business does. And I'd say the majority of business leaders do not communicate these numbers with their teams. But in the corporate world, I would always be sitting down with the different departments in the business and communicating with them the cost for their department versus what the business is delivering. Therefore, they can understand their capacity. And we always apply a little bit of stretch every year. How far can we go before we must increase your headcount?
Such an interesting psychological question, because you're absolutely right that when it's a privately owned business and that guy sat in the office with everyone else doesn't want to share those numbers, and inherently the reason they don't want to do it is they think, oh, if they know how much money I'm making, they're going to want more money, they're going to want a pay rise, they're going to come to me. And actually, I think the fact that there is a direct connection, the fact they know that the book stops with that guy sat there and he's keeping all the money, is actually, it is psychologically more difficult than working for a PLC, a faceless PLC, where you could have sat in the office and they come for a pay rise and you say company policy says, no, we don't do that.
No pay rises until January, sorry.
Till January, I don't make the decision. And you're just hiding, behind that, which I think is easy to do. And then therefore you can be more transparent with the numbers. And I don't think enough is said about how challenging that is. I agree with the concept that you should share everything. And we've seen businesses absolutely flourish because of it. But it's far more challenging when they come directly to you as the owner who's keeping all the money to go, why are you keeping £500,000?
I think
when I'm doing a great job, and it's hard.
As with everything, it's context. Yeah. And we always say to people when they're in that scenario, we've got to paint a full picture with the numbers. So we don't, if you are a business that's making a ton of profit, probably you've invested a ton of money up front to do that, and or you're probably not generating the cash. So it's about making sure that if you are going to be open with your employees and start sharing those numbers, and perhaps we'll do a deep dive podcast specifically on this, because I think this really can be so game changing in a business. But we support a lot of small businesses where they want to discuss those numbers with the employees, sometimes monthly, sometimes annually as like a one-off annual event that they do. And we'll help them put those numbers together so that we make sure that we're painting the full picture of everything. It's not just profit, it's not just sales, it's cash flow, it's investments, it's all of those types of things that we need to make sure all of the employees understand the full financial picture of the business. And therefore they're not looking at the business owner thinking, oh, you've made 400 grand profit this year, but you only paid me 30, I'll have a pay rise. That's kind of not the picture that you want to paint.
Yeah. Well, let's pause that there, because I do think that actually, that whole conversation about transparency, numbers and various things is probably a podcast in itself, isn't it, that we can cover off in another time. But thanks for that, Claire. Hope you got loads of value out of that. And let's find out what we've got in this week's Profit Cash Growth Extra. So this week, I have got a little Profit Cash Growth Extra.
But is it still alive? I think that's the question, because you had a little accident, didn't you?
I did have a little accident with it.
Yeah.
It sounds terrible. People are like, what do you mean he had an accident?
Well, tell us what happened, Simon.
Well, obviously, the point of Profit Cash Growth Extra is to just bring to the forefront how technologies are available and tools are available that perhaps you might have discounted a while ago. I discounted a drone about 3 years ago because the drones cost about $3,000 to buy, and it hadn't dawned on me just how much the price of those had come down and how legislation had changed. And this Christmas, I noticed on Amazon that you can now buy a really, really good DJI Mini 4K drone. I think it was like 270 quid. I think they're now 250. They're even cheaper. And the rules have really changed because, only a few years ago, you had to have a full pilot's license to drive any drone in the UK.
I found this hilarious because I went out one night to play netball, and when I left the house, you were not a drone pilot. And by the time I come back from netball, you had a fully fledged drone license, didn't you?
Well, you don't need a pilot's license anymore. That's the point. But you did need to have a full pilot's license. But then they created these really lightweight mini drones. So the law now says that if a drone's less than 250 grams, so these are 249, these particular ones, that they can be flown without a pilot's license, but only with what's called an operator's license. And anyone can register for an operator's license. It costs about £10 a year on a government website. You don't have to have done any training, and anyone in your organisation can fly it without any form of training. Just somebody has to be the named on the operator's license. So someone has to be responsible. You get given an operator's license number, which must be printed and attached to the drone. So I guess if it crashes or causes damage, and actually you don't need insurance or anything like that. It's optional to have insurance if you want to be really belt and braces, but you don't need it legally. But anyway, it's been an absolute game changer for us, because we obviously deal a lot in property. We have our own properties and various other things. And actually just like the really sad loserish things, like I can now inspect the roof and the gutters. I mean, just so cheaply and easily. So like just fly the drone up, check the roof's okay. If somebody said something's leaking, we had one recently where we had leaking, and it totally identified massive roof problems that we could just get solved straight away without paying a load of money for somebody to go up there, and health and safety. And then obviously photography and things like that, and marketing. I mean, the cool stuff you can do with these now for marketing all of your different businesses and various other things is truly fantastic. They're not hard to operate, he says, having just like...
Yeah, you did crash it,
slightly clipped a tree. Just make sure you get familiar with the controls. But yeah, I thought it was a really cool investment, really useful. It's really elevated. It's just taken everything we do to another level again, and again saved a load of money, because if we outsourced drone photography before, we'd perhaps pay somebody 150 quid just for a set of photos on one project, and now we own our own drone for 250 quid. So
and
go and have a look at them, drones.
You have had a lot of fun. It's essentially a Christmas present for Simon that has got, a bit of a dual purpose on the business, isn't it?
I liked it. Well, I always like to find new things, don't I? It wasn't even my idea. It was my business partner, Chris. He sort of came along and said, did you know these drones have come down? We really ought to think about this. And yeah, you're spot on. It's been a good investment. It's a no-brainer at that price. And if your business works at height and would benefit from it, take a look at it, because very, very simple technology. Anyway, thanks for joining us for another week of the Profit Cash Growth podcast. Hope you enjoyed the episode this week. As always, if you feel like you might have outgrown your current accountant and you'd like to work with Claire and the team at Profit Cash Growth, or even if you just want a free finance health check of your business, you can pop on over to the profitcashgrowth.com website. You can book on there a time slot, and Claire will do a full analysis of your business to see if there's any holes or anywhere we can help out there. As always, check out the back catalogue of all of the podcasts. Most of the deep dives are all evergreen, so you can get massive education just by diving back through them when you're travelling around. Check out the YouTube channel, and just share this episode with any other business owner friends that you've got. You just pop the share button, and say, hello mate, I think you're going to like this episode. We'll see you all again next week.